The first time he saw her, she was falling from the sky. It wasn't rain, though the storm above hissed like it wanted to cry. A silvery pod crashed into the wheat field behind Oren's cabin, sending birds screaming into the wind. Oren, a quiet man who lived alone since the world changed, grabbed his old rifle and ran out. What he found wasn't a weapon, not a monster, but a woman. Her skin shimmered faintly, like moonlight on snow. Her long hair curled in strange shapes, floating as if water moved through it. And her eyes, deep violet, wide with pain and pride, locked onto his as she staggered out of the broken pod. She didn't speak his language, but when she raised her hands, trembling, he knew she meant no harm. Still, she collapsed seconds later, unconscious. Oren hesitated. He had lived through the first contact war, seen friends taken, others destroyed in fire. But something about her. She wasn't like the others. She looked lost, afraid. He carried her inside. The fire crackled low in the hearth. The wind howled outside. And the alien woman slept in his bed, her breath soft, her hands curling like she was dreaming of something gentle. He called her Sierra, not because she told him, she hadn't spoken a word yet, but because the name felt right. Like it already belonged to her. And though she was his captive, resting under his roof, wrapped in his blankets, it was Oren who couldn't take his eyes off her. The nights grew colder. He added more wood to the fire, watched over her, made sure she stayed warm. Sometimes she twitched in her sleep, murmuring in a language he didn't understand. He wanted to know what she was dreaming, what she had seen, what she had run from. Oren didn't trust easily, but something about her, even in silence, touched the parts of him that still believed in kindness. She wasn't just an alien. She was a mystery wrapped in a kind of sadness he recognized all too well. He remembered being broken after the world turned on itself. Remembered nights with no one, no warmth, just silence. She didn't belong here, but maybe, just maybe, neither did he. He watched her fingers twitch as she healed. He noticed the delicate glow of her veins. He realized her skin felt cool, not cold, like touching polished stone left out under the stars. And in that silence, something began. Not love, not yet, but a flicker, a spark in the dark. Days passed. Syra awoke slowly, her movements unsure, eyes darting across the room. Oren kept his distance, careful not to scare her. When she tried to stand, she winced, gripping her side. He reached out gently to help, and for a moment, she stared at his hand as if it were a puzzle. Then, cautiously, she took it. They didn't speak the same language, but small gestures became their words. He brought her food, simple things, a soft bread, warmed by fire, a bowl of soup that smelled of herbs and root vegetables. She sniffed, each thing before tasting, her eyes narrowing at first, then widening with surprise. The second time she tasted honey, she let out a soft sound, almost a laugh. Sweet and light, like wind passing over water. It made him smile. He pointed to things, saying the words slowly. Bread, fire, sky. She repeated them, her voice smooth and low, her accent curling the words in curious ways. Brad, fi ski. And then she pointed, touched his hand. Name? He tapped his chest. Oren. She touched hers, pausing, then said, Syra. So it was her name, and it suited her, soft but strong, like a river hidden beneath ice. They sat together, near the fire often, quiet but not uncomfortable. She studied him with open curiosity. His face, his hands, the way he moved. When he spoke, she sometimes leaned closer, watching his lips carefully. Once, She reached out and gently touched them, tracing the shape as he spoke a word. He froze at her touch. Her skin was cooler than his, but soft. Her eyes met his, unafraid. "Speak," she whispered. "I learn." She was learning fast. Every day her words grew. She began forming small phrases. Sky. Big. You. Warm. I. Safe. Each one made his heart beat a little faster. He fixed up his cabin, building her a small bed from old blankets and wood. She moved between the spaces carefully, always respectful of his home. But some nights, he'd wake to find her sitting, near him instead, wrapped in his coat, staring at the fire with a distant look in her eyes. She never cried, but there was sorrow in her silence, a kind of loneliness he knew too well. One night, as wind whistled through the cracks in the walls, she sat beside him and held out her hand. "Cold," she said softly. Without thinking, he pulled her closer. She leaned against him, her body relaxing, like it had been waiting for warmth all along. Her head rested on his shoulder, her fingers slowly wrapping around his arm. "Better," she whispered. His throat tightened. She was still healing, still unsure of the world, but in that quiet moment with her so close, Oren realized he wasn't just protecting her anymore. He was starting to need her too, not because she was alien, not because she was strange, but because she saw him and stayed. Winter deepened. The wind turned sharp, slicing through the trees outside, but inside the cabin the fire burned steady, and Syra had started to smile. She moved with more strength now. Her wounds had faded, and her eyes no longer held the haunted, far-off look they once did. Each day, her steps grew lighter. She hummed sometimes, soft, unfamiliar melodies that made Oren stop and listen without realizing. She was learning more of his language, faster than he expected. "Why you help me?" she asked one morning, sitting cross-legged on the rug, spooning warm porridge into her mouth. Oren looked up from the fire, thinking. "Because you needed it." Her brow furrowed slightly. "Many would not." "I was enemy, yes?" He didn't answer right away. He stared at the fire, the memories clawing back, explosions in the sky, the screams, the silence after. "You didn't start that war," he said quietly. "I could see it in your eyes." Syra nodded slowly. "I did not want war. I was taken, sent to fight, but I ran." Her voice caught a little. Oren met her eyes. Something passed between them, an understanding without words. "You're not a soldier anymore," he said softly. "No," she whispered. "Now, I am something else." She didn't say what, but her hand brushed his as she passed him her empty bowl. That night they sat by the fire again, closer than before. She leaned into him without hesitation now, her head resting just beneath his chin. Her hair smelled faintly like something sweet, wild and alien but calming. "Your heart," she murmured. "It is kind." He didn't know how to respond. No one had said that to him in years. Maybe never. "You don't belong here," he said finally. "You should be flying across stars, not stuck with me in a broken cabin." She tilted her head, eyes glowing softly. "Maybe I belong where I feel safe." He stared at her. The words hung in the air like fragile glass. She reached up, touched his face gently, tracing the faint scar near his jaw. "You have pain," she whispered. "Old, but strong." "I lost people," he said. Quietly, "I lost myself." Syra nodded, her fingers still resting against his skin. "Then we are same." In that moment, he forgot she was alien, forgot the years of distrust and silence. She wasn't a prisoner anymore, not a stranger from the stars. She was just Syra, beautiful, strong, lonely and warm, despite the cold skin. Their hands found each other again. No words, just touch. And it was enough. That night, they didn't sleep apart. They didn't speak of it in the morning, but her smile as she stirred. The pot, the way her fingers brushed his when she passed the bread, it said everything. She was changing, and so was he. The snow finally stopped falling. Weeks had passed, and the world outside the cabin was buried in white. But inside, everything had come alive. Oren had built a small greenhouse with old glass panels and scraps from the nearby ruins. Syra helped, her hands nimble, her strength surprising. She learned quickly, watching how he fitted pieces, mimicking his movements until she could do it herself. Side by side, they worked. They laughed. They teased. She had started calling him Oren more, adding a soft syllable he didn't understand. "What does that mean?" he asked one day, wiping sweat from his brow. She smiled, a gentle glow in her eyes. "In my tongue, it means one I trust to hold me." He blinked. The words hit deep, simple, yet heavy. She stood close, brushing snowflakes from his shoulder. Her fingers lingered on the curve of his arm. "You hold more than me now, Oren Moore," she said softly. "You hold my heart." He didn't answer right away. His throat tightened again, like it always did when she got close, when she said things like that. He looked at her, at the curve of her smile, the spark behind her eyes, the strength in her hands. "I don't want to let it go," he finally whispered. Her eyes shone. They kissed for the first time under the low beams of the greenhouse, with the frost glinting around them and the fire of two hearts finally rising. Her lips were cool, soft, but the kiss was deep, full of quiet need and unspoken promises. She trembled when his hands cupped her face, not with fear, but with emotion too big to hold in. They didn't need to say it, but they both knew. This was no longer just survival. It was connection, belonging, a kind of love neither had expected to find on Earth, let alone across stars. Later, curled in the blankets, her head resting on his chest, Syra traced slow circles on his skin. "My people. They would not understand this," she murmured. "They believe humans are wild, dangerous." Oren gave a dry chuckle. "They're not wrong," she smiled. "But they don't see this part, this softness. You surprised me." He looked down at her. "You surprised me too. I thought I'd never let someone in again." She looked up. "And now?" He brushed a lock of silver hair from her cheek. "Now I can't imagine this place without you." She sighed, a quiet sound of peace, and pressed closer. "Then I am not your captive." "No," he said. "You never were." Her hand slid into his. "Then what am I, Oren Moore?" He kissed her fingertips. "You're becoming my everything." Outside, the snow melted slowly. Inside, something far stronger bloomed. Spring arrived gently. The ice retreated, revealing green shoots pushing up through the earth like quiet miracles. Birds returned. Streams sang again. And in the cabin nestled among the trees, warmth had already taken root in two hearts that had once been strangers. Oren watched Syra from the doorway as she wandered barefoot through the soft grass, her long hair catching the breeze, her laughter light and free. She turned, catching his gaze, and smiled the smile that always made him feel like the world had finally made sense. She wasn't a prisoner. She wasn't a refugee. She was his, and he was hers. They had rebuilt the garden together. She'd added alien seeds from the tiny pouch she'd kept hidden when she first arrived. The blooms were unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Glowing petals, vines that shimmered in the sun, fruits that tasted like starlight and honey. She'd created a place that was part of her home and part of his. One evening, as the sky turned gold, she called him over. She was kneeling in the grass, hands stained with soil and glowing pollen. "I made something," she said. He knelt beside her. In her palms was a small woven band, crafted from earth vines and thread-like fibers from her homeworld. "What is it?" he asked. "A bond ring," she whispered. "In my people's way, we give it to one we choose, one who becomes more than a mate, becomes life." Oren looked into her eyes. "You want to give this to me?" Syra nodded, nervous for the first time. "Only if you feel the same." He didn't answer right away. He took her hand, lifted the ring, and gently slid it onto his finger. Then he reached into his pocket, pulling out a small carved pendant, something he'd made from old metal, shaped into a spiral that matched the galaxy design she'd once drawn for him in the dirt. "I made this for you," he said. "I didn't know when I'd give it, but now I do." He placed it around her neck, and she gasped softly, fingers touching the metal like it was sacred. "Oren Moore," she whispered. "Syra," he said, voice low and warm. "You were never mine to keep. You chose me. That means everything." She leaned into him, arms wrapping around his shoulders. "Then from now on, I am not just yours." He kissed her gently, forehead resting against hers. "You're my queen." She smiled, eyes shining. "And you are my heart." The wind whispered through the trees, carrying their promises into the stars above, and in a quiet part of Earth, where a war had once touched and passed, two souls, one born of soil, one of starlight, stood together not as captor and captive, but as something far greater, as love, as peace, as home.